Hey everybody, it's Tafony once again. I hope you're doing well today. We're with the ASM Hydrasynth. It is a desktop digital polysynth, and it sounds like this. Okay, so I got an email recently that says, "Hello, Tafony, first-time caller, long-time listener, wondering if you have tried the ASM Hydrasynth before. Has many of the things you mentioned liking in other videos, wavetables with scanning, wave animators, easy point-to-point modulations, and screens, so many screens, feel like it might be up your alley." So I did have the Hydrasynth really early on in my synth journey. I remember those days before Eurorack, just constantly cycling through different boxes. Nothing ever really fit right, trying to make this crazy cacophony of different discrete hardware workflows and everything, and it never really worked out. And what I remember about the Hydrasynth, though, was the polyphony count was really high. It sounded really good, but it was very deep, and it was really challenging for me at that time to leave the presets, so I sold it. So fast forward nearly 4 or 5 years at this point. I try and avoid these desktop boxes because I'm into Eurorack, and I find there's so little room and they're so annoying to have to boost the levels up and all the connectivity and what have you. But that email really did point out so many things that really interest me, and I'm curious to see how they work in a desktop box. And naturally, because I have zero self-control, the Hydrasynth has returned. So now we are back in the weird setup. I'm going to explore this on its own, probably make a patch from scratch on it and talk about it and my thoughts on it. If I have any regrets in my previous videos, I think one of them's on the Mini Freak video. I was pretty new to the synth at that time, and I kind of ignored the mod matrix because I wasn't ready to get into it for the video. But then after the video, when I spent more time with it, I found it extremely annoying. And I touched on it more in the Novation Peak video, where I talked about how those mod matrices, I really didn't like them, and I find them really convoluted. But the Hydrasynth kind of does away with all that. Not that it doesn't have a mod matrix, it's right here, but it's so simple. Like that email said, it's just point to point. I want to assign this LFO to this oscillator. Well, boom, it's there. Do we want to assign it to pitch? Do we want to, how much do we want to assign it? Do we want to do pitch, wave scan, all these different things? It is modular in a way, I think. Like everything, I know everything says that. I know Electron boxes even say that, just because it's broken down to components in my mind doesn't make it modular. The way that this is both laid out, the circuit diagram is part of the board. I love that. The way that everything is connected by simply connecting it here. I think that's incredibly powerful. It almost reminds me of VCV Rack, and maybe that's why I hated this when I first got it, because I just totally wasn't wired that way at the time, and now I totally am wired that way. So yeah, like I said, I'm no expert, but I think the best way to demonstrate the Hydrasynth is to just go through it together, make a patch of our own, and go from there. So digital polysynth. Not multi-timbral, which is somewhat surprising in my mind. Let's turn this down a hair. Let's do some preset surfing. Random. Polyphonic aftertouch even in the desktop version, or they call it polytouch, I believe. I want to get into doing some sounds right off the rip here. So the arpeggiator does not continue when you switch patches, which is kind of a bummer. Everything on here is extremely digital, and I love that. But one thing I will say about all the videos I was watching in preparing this, both in the patch creation videos and the preset wandering ones like you're hearing right now, this isn't a good example. What's a good example? So many of them were just in such high registers. So the other way you can scan through the different presets is to click this browse button. We can go to bank. I will cycle through them. And these contextual screens like that email mentioned, I freaking love them. So I mentioned in other videos that if I was going to create a synthesizer for beginners, what I would want to do is either do something digitally that shows you all the parameters, like if it was being modulated, it would turn the knobs for you, or for patch recall, if you're loading presets, it would flip all the knobs to that. One of the issues with hardware for me when I was a beginner is that when you recall a patch, your panel isn't reflecting what's going on at all, so it's hard to learn how to create those things yourself when they're just kind of there and not presented to you. When it comes to the Hydrasynth, because it's these endless encoders with the LED rings, let's get out of here, all the different values, and we're looking at the macro mode right now, are presented with LED lines digitally. So it can do that for you, right? So if I go into something like the oscillator here, you can see, that's not a good example, but like the depth here has a value that was loaded by the preset, and the encoder reflects that. I think that's really powerful for users, and I really like how that's done. It also negates the need for jump versus pickup mode, because you're always at the pickup point, right? So 79.5%, we didn't have to jump, we didn't have to skip, we didn't have to hop, I guess. The depth was increased or decreased by the turn of the knob, and I really love that. Like, I think just like everything on here is really cleverly done. Now, I will say when I picked this up, I was looking at the different versions. You're going to be either considering the desktop or the Explorer for me, right? What I think is actually a big consideration between those two, besides the keyboard obviously being the glaring one, but on the desktop you get twice the screens here. On the Explorer you only get half, and nobody seemed to really talk about that online. It was only when somebody in Discord pointed that out to me that I was like, whoa, yeah, that's a good point. Because having twice the macros, having twice the available parameters, yeah, you still need to page through it. There's nothing on this page. But if I was in the Explorer one, you would have to page to see these all these parameters, because you only get half the screen. So again, I love the screens. I love just everything being presented to you contextually, right? It's not buried behind button combos or menus or diving. Well, I mean, it is sort of a menu in its way. But when I select the oscillator, things that are relevant show up, so they can go a lot deeper in my mind. I know many of you hate screens if you're on this channel, but you can load an entire modular system into a tiny box like this. Again, no multi-timbrality, which is kind of a shame. Given how much I like the workflow of this one, I feel like if anybody could do multi-timbrality in a way that made sense, it would be ASM or the Hydrasynth people, I guess. I don't know if those are one and the same or not, but I'm going to call it that because I can. So what we want to do, let's hit init, and we're going to initialize this patch. There is a saw wave. We are only listening to one oscillator, I believe. And again, I feel like all of the demos I watched, and it was probably not as bad as what you're hearing right now, but everybody had it in just such a high register. That's no criticism of the pros. Obviously, they know what they're doing, and I'm just some guy. But I feel like in this video, I'm going to try and bring it down in register, right? I'm not going to necessarily try and make bass lines. I feel like this thing excels at pads and everything like most desktop polysynths do, but I am going to try and bring that octave down. So maybe I'll derail myself for a second as well. We're going to hit shift and bring the octave down on this, not keyboard, rubber pad thing. And when I first saw this, I thought for sure this was a sequencer. It's not. It's a, not keyboard, but button style pad playing thing. Has aftertouch, polytouch as they call it, which is really bizarre. When I saw this on the shelf, I just thought, oh, it's awesome. It includes like a Novation circuit style sequencer, and that's great. No, it's strictly for playing by hand, which is very interesting, but hey, it's there. We will do some arpeggiation, latch, and you can do lots of different things. Sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but rambling about is what we do. You can quantize it. Let's go major. We're down an octave, which is shown there. You can change the key. We won't do that. We'll just go to home. We're already quantizing it to major. I'll stick to the blue notes. And this is the simplest patch. This is the init patch. listening to one oscillator. And again, all the different components, 3 oscillators is like pretty standard for any polysynth. If we go over to the mixer though, you'll see you're only listening to one oscillator, and this just makes everything so easy, right? With this, everything is contextual to the menu. So if I want to bring in my oscillator 2, bring it in here. It's the same wave shape. I'll click on oscillator in the module select. I just love that workflow. I know I'm, again, like everything, it's all about your preferences, but I just love that workflow. I know everybody's preferences are different, but for me, this is just how I'm wired at this point, and I really like that. Let's go back to oscillator 1, and we'll do some noodling. So it's all wavetable based, but you get basic waveforms for the first 2. There's 128 or something, so I'm not going to list them all manually. Let's just go through a whole wackitude of them. And I love my wavetables. Notice that these are all fixed, though. Because there's a separate mode for wavetable scanning. And like I said, there's like 128 of them, and the last ones are harmonic sines. Again, things I also love. I'm surprised they didn't given all the other points that they hit on in that email, I'm surprised nobody mentioned that I love oscilloscopes, and it's one of those things that I'm always really missing on desktop synths, and of course the Hydrasynth has one. Like, I feel like that's another great tool for learning. I know the, what's the Korg Minilog, Monolog as well, have those oscilloscopes. I just feel like those are great tools for learners like myself. Before we get too in the weeds with the oscillators, I also want to talk about some global settings. If you click on voice, we're in polyphonic mode, so we can go play chords, but you can also do unison, which I really love. I think low and high means the direction in which they go. And listen to the init patch with Sawtooth. Like, listen how huge that already sounds. Right? And that's 4, 5, 6, 7. Use all 8 voices. A little bit of detune. And things they added, I believe these were in a recent update. But we have analog flavor. And I think this is kind of like that drift. To me, it just sounds more good. There's warm mode, just kind of like a EQing. I feel like a little bit of low end coming up. That was another new thing, I believe. See, I'm in unison mode still. I need to get back into poly mode too. And again, I still feel like maybe it's just lack of music knowledge that I'm just like, I really want unison mode. But for simplicity, we'll stay in poly mode. I'll leave that warm mode on because I like it. Stereo width. I'm not going to go through every single parameter on this thing because we will be here all day, which we probably will be anyway. I'll just hit home. Home button front and center. It's like, looks like a crazy space bar. You can assign macros here. So if you're performing, let's just say I don't know, I've got this really boring arpeggio going. I can assign macros here to different things. Like my filter suite could be here. Obviously, there's dedicated filter controls, but if it was distortion or an effect parameter or something, you could all assign it to macros here. And I love that again. I just think that's like super powerful. So latch is off. We are coming back into oscillator, and I'll try out some different modes. So we are in single wave mode, but if we get into wave scan mode, we are going to do some wavetable scanning, which I love. That was not a nice chord. So wavetable scanning. If you come in here, it'll cycle through the waveform, but we need to create our wavetable list first. So we hit this button here to enter wavetable mode, and I'll show you one of the things that I like about the Hydrasynth is the ability to randomize things. So I don't know specifically which waves I want. I just want to have a nice fun table full of things to do. So I hold this random button, and I'll hit random. So now we are in saw. If we back out here, I'll come back to our, so if we go back to our oscillator now, and we scan through the wavetable, that's the good stuff. I love wavetable scanning. Listen to that. Yes. So arpeggiate. So the scan value is a fixed parameter. We assigned our wavetable list. You can do bit reduction. I believe this is also new. It's interesting to see how little difference it makes sonically, I guess, until you get really low. And it actually, like, it'll completely go down to scale. This is the square wave territory, but I kind of like how it gets down there too, right? I almost want to assign that to a macro, but probably not today. So with that being said, what I want to do is scan through my wavetable here. So let's do that by assigning some modulation, as we will. And like I said, I love how easy it is on the Hydrasynth. We just hold LFO, boom, 1. Where do we want it to go? Well, we want it to go to wave scan, and then this will be a mount. be a fair bit, but it seems like this LFO is super fast. We'll go into LFO and jump ahead to the LFO parameter. So what I also love to do, BPM sync. Yes. So now our rate is instead of hertz, right? Like a LFO is just an oscillator. This is pitch. When we do BPM sync, we can do clock divisions. And I love that. Yeah. So now we're moving through that wavetable. And again, I think we are getting too high in the register, so let's go shift, octave down. So we'll go down here, hit latch, arpeggiate it. And then we can come back to our mod matrix. We can do negative or positive. So now that we're doing it pause, so because we're doing it positive, let's go back into 1 and bring our wave scan all the way down to the start. Yeah. And I realize this is a little crazy, so maybe we're going to try and randomize some of these to give it a smoother sound. Tap tempo for our arpeggiator. I want to slow this down. I'm sure there's a way to manually enter this, but just slow it down a little bit. Yeah. And you can stack modulations too, so what if I want this envelope to go to that as well? We can do that. Do the same assignment, we'll go to wave scan. And then jumping over to the envelope now, we want to take the sustain off, and we'll do just a simple AD envelope. And again, I love the screen. It just shows us the friggin' envelope on there, right? Things that I think would be amazing for beginners, or things that I appreciate as one who's not very removed from it myself. The more time I spend with it, the less I hate this. I'm kind of like, you know what? I feel like I could learn something more if I had a full keyboard, but the space savings, it's fun. All right, we haven't even filtered this or done anything, so let's go in now, jump ahead to the filter. So you get dedicated filter controls here, and again, the oscilloscope shows us what's going on. Well, it's not an oscilloscope in this case, it's a demonstration of the filter, but I feel it's really useful for beginners, right? You can see what does resonance do? Well, it increases the peak right at the cutoff. Get drive and morph as well. And because it's digital, you get the beautiful thing of different filter modes. These are all emulations, but I don't think there's any lack of warmthness, gooiness, all of those butteriness adjectives, stuff we've got. Again, I said this in the peak video, but it's really nice to just be able to jump between 12 and 24, even for me as a learning exercise, right? Which one do I prefer? Right? You can see that slope demonstrated on there, right on the screen. The difference between 12 and 24 dB is the angle is more crazy. There's a low pass gate mode too, which is interesting because I sort of like, it depends on how you're patching it, how much it actually acts like a low pass gate, but it just sounds like a good filter, right? I just like this one. I just think it's neat. And these will self-oscillate. And simplest assignment here, LFO right to it. Again, I wish it showed on the screen. This is just another silly nitpick, but I wish, like, hold on. I'm modulating with the LFO, I'm modulating it with the envelope. I wish it just showed on the screen, the cutoff moving. I think that would be a really helpful way to teach new people. But listen, it's gooey, right? The digital filter is not bad at all. MS-20, people love those filters. Those are SEM filters? High pass? And you get two filters, right? So I'll use low pass here. Set my cutoff all the way down. Key track, you can under track or over track. So if you want to overcompensate, you get these like weird bloopy things, especially under high resonance. I'll bring that down a little bit. There is a lot of filters. This Val one actually I do want to demonstrate because I thought it was really cool. The mini freak is getting jealous. Key track down a little bit. And velocity envelope. Look at the mouth go, just like on the Mini Freak. I don't know. It's great for like acid bass lines, right? Yeah. So another filter too, so I have that valve filter on top, but I could still have this one. The morph type, I don't think this is on the filter 1, only on the morph. Only on the filter 2, but you have like a continuously variable one, so I have bandpass here, but I can make it high pass or low pass. And originally I thought, I don't know if I'd even want that, but what I do really like about that is you can assign LFO to filter 2, and we'll make it morph. We've got too much resonance, we're squawking a little bit. But yeah, let's take this back to a simple low pass for simplicity, I think. I like my 24. There is a ladder 24. That's one of my favorite filters. Resonance in. And then you'll see, as indicated by the block diagram, some of the normalizations, one of them being envelope 2 to the amp, which I super appreciate. Let's go into here and set our sustain to 0. And you have the shortest envelope still exists. If you hear it, it's popping. So we want to add a little bit of attack, a little bit of decay. And then I'll add in some other oscillators just for simplicity. Maybe we'll do pulse for this one and this one. You get less options on OS3, so we'll go in here and do a square wave, probably. As you see, it's by default tuned down to suboctave, which is very smart. Mixer coming in. Bring that in. You get ring mod and noise. Noise is nice. There's lots of different noise and ring mod options here. I'm not going to go into depth on there, mainly because I'm not the biggest ring mod fan. Let's try a different arpeggio just so we don't get too much ear fatigue. One of the other things that I think is totally valid is to hold random, randomize everything, hit random again. Just gives you some new stuff. Right? Like, if you don't necessarily know what direction you're after, it doesn't hurt to go, boom, randomize. Well, now we have a nice low pass. Let's morph it a little bit so that it can let some more of that high pass through, because I have low pass on the first one. Maybe we'll take the cutoff up a little bit. Yeah. And then we'll go back to the mixer. Let's bring in some of the other waves. There's our wavetable going, but I'm mixing it with that pulse wave, sub-octave. So now we've got that sparkly, high-end digital grittiness that I love so much, with a nice fat low end as well. Add a little bit of noise, because it's always nice for polysynths in my opinion. And you get every variety of noise here. It's all digitally sampled, so there's pink, there's brown, there's ways to mangle it and adjust it to your liking. I'll just leave it in the default white noise. I've mentioned in the past I'm not a huge fan of ring mod, but if we bring it in here, doesn't sound too bad. I believe it's ring modding 1 and 2 by default, but I think you can change that in here, yeah. But what I definitely want to touch on, because I feel like it's kind of like the killer feature of this synth in general, is the mutants. So let's take this oscillator 2, pick a nice waveform that isn't that one. Maybe we'll go for a simple one for demonstration purposes. I like this triangle saw. It's just a little bit more straightforward than a full-on saw wave. Mutants, so in my modular world, and what they touched on in that email as well, is sort of all these wave creators, wave shapers that aren't necessarily as available in desktop synths usually. So I'll turn off this arpeggio to save our sanity. If I hold one of these down, I have sustain off, so they're just sending one-shots, but yeah. So if we go into what are called mutants, you get a bunch of different things. There is FM. Maybe we'll add some sustain so I can hold these notes. Sorry, this envelope 2 sustain. Can you hear the pulsing of that filter? If we go into mutants, there's a whole bunch of different things. We have dry and wet mix, because they're kind of like effects, right? So we have linear FM, feedback, depth. I wish there was through 0 FM. But wave stack, you know, again, I'm not the craziest FM fan, but there are a million sources on here to do this with. That actually does sound really nice. Feedback up, totally wet. I actually do really like that. And these stack too. On the first two oscillators you get two mutants, so if I do like that, which I do, we can come into mutant number 4, which is the second for oscillator 2, and go over to my favorite mutant, which is the wave stack. You know I love wave animators, and you get one on a hardware synth here. I'm surprised these aren't as popular, because I just think they sound awesome. Yeah, okay, let's go over to oscillator 1. Maybe I'll take oscillator 2 out of the mix, and we'll just listen to oscillator 1, so it has no mutants. It's just that crazy wavetable. But if we go in here now, add a mutant, we'll do oscillator sync as another thing. Again, ring mod oscillator sync aren't my favorite effects, but pulse width mod. So Alpha Juno has pulse width mod that I love so much that kind of makes those Hoover synth stuff. Hydrasynth has that here. It has pulse width original, which I think is better used on square waves for pulse width, but we're using it on the wavetable scan here, which is cool. We kind of have our own manual. And you can just do some crazy timbres with it, right? Modulation being assigned to this is my first thought, but there's also this other mode, which is the pulse width squeeze. Getting those like hard sync sounds. Mix it in. Make it super deep. And then there's this ASM mode, which is a whole bunch of wave warping, sort of like an oscillator would. Feedback. I'm not sure about the specifics of it, but they all sound great. Let's go over to harmonic now, and I believe this is sort of like additive stuff. Maybe I'm using too much feedback. God, there is a lot of depth here. If I don't cover your favorite feature, please shout it out in the comments. Phase diff, this stuff is awesome. Yeah, listen to that. Doing like phase offset. Just like some distortions and goodness, right? I believe that's the last one. Yes, it is. Let's go back to our mixer. Yeah. Envelope is a little whack, but yeah. What isn't whack is the effects. There is 4 layers of effects. I believe some of them can even be stacked within them, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but we have pre-effects, so I like to add chorus. We're just going to fatten this up as much as we can. Can't do the frozen chorus that we love so much, but it can go super slow and super deep for almost like an octaver effect. Delay. I definitely want this BPM synced, which I really appreciate. Again, sometimes those things are buried behind lots of layers for some reason. Has some EQ parameters. Let's let some dry signal into. Feedback. There's a bunch of different types. So we have pan for like ping pong. I believe reverse is really cool. Make it a lot slower. Yeah. And then reverb is my favorite. There's a whole bunch of different types. Maybe for simplicity, we'll take the delay off, chorus off, just so you can hear it. These reverbs are great. So totally dry. Sometimes in polysynths, what really makes them special, and this is definitely the case in the peak, is their effects section. Like, this sounds amazing. To me. Tone. Low damp, high damp. Things that I'm used to seeing on low damp, high damp, low damp up, tone. You know, you can make the low end really ring out with a little bit of high pass filtering sound on it. Make it super huge. It'll even freeze. Listen to that. But the one I like the most, there's room, there's plate. But cloud is my favorite. With some pitch shifting goodness. This reminds me of Desmos Versio, and I love that about it. Listen to that. Let's take this off and just... Listen to that. I love that. Absolutely love that. I don't need an arpeggio. Bring the chorus back in. It just gets huge. And after all that, you can do post effects, which can be a chorus, again, flanger. Yeah. Rotary. I'm going totally wet just to make it really apparent, but here's phaser. Yeah. Lo-fi. Sounds like high pass filter to me. Tremolo. Just a full range of EQ, which is super rad. And a compressor. Distortion. Ooh. Some symmetry. Just blast it. And again, all of this stuff is easy to modulate, so we'll go, which is a slow-looking LFO is here. Let's go post effects. Parameter, let's go to, param 1. Well, let's go dry wet. I wish it showed us specifically what the parameters were called, but that's okay. Hear that? Yeah. So yeah, that email is right about the Hydrasynth. It really is all the things I love in synthesizers. I will say there is CV gate stuff I didn't really touch on in the video, but none of the connections are really what I want. Like, I want clock in. I want pitch and gate in. I want to sequence it from the Hermod, right? And I can do that over MIDI, which is probably what I'm going to have to do, but it just sort of seems backwards for how I want it. I would also like to, there's 5 envelopes, 5 LFOs. That's super powerful. I would love to send that out of the Hydrasynth, not into the mods. I guess these are probably assignable, but again, it just sort of seems like, the CV gate pairings are not exactly what I would want, right? I kind of want the opposite, and that's okay. I don't look to desktop synths expecting Eurorack integration as much. It just seems it's just kind of interesting to see how it's backwards here in my mind. I mean, yeah, I think the peak might sound a little bit better, but this workflow is, like, to me, so worth it. And I love digital synths. I love the things that it's able to do with mutants. That's kind of how I'm wired at this point in modular. The only problem with this is it's outside of the modular, so what do I do now? I guess we're going to have to find out. All right, I'm Tafony. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.